Shadow of Destiny. The piercing night wind sent shivers down Taufin's spine. The starless dark sky made the narrow corridor in his house feel endless, creating a tense atmosphere. Taufin hurriedly walked, his heart filled with an unexplainable sense of anxiety. Every now and then he glanced nervously behind him. There was an uneasy feeling haunting him, as if there was a presence following his every step. Taufin hoped it was just his imagination, that he was being overly paranoid. The more he ran, the stronger the sense of unease grew. He could feel the presence of something dark, but he couldn't quite make out what it was. Taufin turned to look behind him, and his heart raced as he saw a giant dark figure lurking in the distance. The figure hid behind the night's curtain, staring at him with a cold, bloodthirsty gaze. Taufin was frozen in fear, and a deadly dread overtook all hope. The dark figure approached, emitting a growling sound that echoed in his ears. Summoning courage from deep within, Taufin screamed in fear and tried to escape from the mysterious entity. He ran with his eyes closed, praying to make it to his home and escape the danger. But the dark night swallowed Taufin, and the seemingly endless corridor became a dead end. Moments later, Taufin felt something reach for him from behind. He turned in fear and screamed, seeing the terrifying dark shadow looming very close. The face had no features, but its eyes pierced him sharply. Taufin fainted, his body going limp. When Taufin opened his eyes, he realized he was in a hospital room. The doctor explained that he had suffered severe trauma from that night's events. There was something even more peculiar related to his health. After further examination, it was revealed that Taufin had a congenital heart defect since birth. He had little time left to live. Taufin began to realize that the eerie creature that had been haunting him was not a real ghost, but a symbol of the impending death. The dark, featureless figure was a harbinger of his life's end. Taufin resigned himself to God, praying that his soul would be accepted into his presence. Taufin felt his body growing weaker as time passed, like a hurricane destroying everything in its path. He struggled to breathe as if something was tightly constricting his hands. His heart beat irregularly, like a broken note in a mournful melody. Taufin knew that his time was running out as death drew near with certainty. One night, as darkness enveloped his hospital room, Taufin awoke with cold sweat pouring down his face. His eyes were fixed on a corner of the room, where a towering black shadow loomed. The shadow appeared menacing, as if it held many secrets yet to be revealed. At this point, fear had completely left Taufin's heart. He embraced the bitter reality he faced. With quivering lips, he whispered words that sounded frail, but were filled with true courage. "So have you come to take me?" The black shadow remained motionless, seemingly unresponsive to Taufin's question. However, in the poignant silence, Taufin felt an unseen vibration from the shadow, as if it was signaling that its arrival was indeed inevitable. Suddenly, in his deteriorating condition, Taufin remembered his mother, who was battling illness at home. He realized that his mother had no one to care for her when he had to leave. With love in his heart, Taufin didn't want to depart without saying goodbye to his mother. "Can I make one request?" Taufin rasped, looking at the deathly shadow that loomed over him. The shadow remained still, not moving an inch, but its presence exuded strength and fear. "Allow me to bid farewell to my mother before you take me," Taufin whispered with a voice as fragile as a whisper in the piercing night wind. For some reason, the black shadow nodded slowly, as if agreeing to Taufin's sincere request. Without saying a word, the shadow disappeared, leaving Taufin filled with renewed hope. The next day, with his remaining strength, Taufin pleaded with the nurse caring for him to allow him a brief leave. Although the nurse was concerned about his deteriorating condition, she eventually granted his request, understanding the depth of Taufin's feelings. They both knew that Taufin's time was running short, and no one could stop the final moments of his unstoppable journey. With hurried steps, Taufin made his way to his home, which exuded an aura of solitude. When he arrived at the doorstep of his old house, his gaze fell upon his mother, sitting lost in thought on the porch. For a moment, Taufin paused, lost in contemplation. "Mother," he called out with a voice lost in sorrow. His mother was startled, and tears of joy welled up in her eyes as she saw her pale son approaching. "My child, what has happened to you? Why are you here in such a state?" she asked with genuine concern. With a weak smile gracing his lips, Taufin tried to answer, "I just wanted to bid farewell to you, mother." Before his words were interrupted by a sudden cough, and blood dripped from his lips. Taufin's mother was increasingly shaken by her son's worsening condition. Nevertheless, she held on, clutching Taufin's hand with the hope that the strength radiating from their touch would help him. "Mother, forgive me for not being able to stay with you any longer," Taufin softly said, trying to comfort his devastated mother. At that moment, the dark shadow once again appeared behind his mother, lurking in the shroud of night. Nevertheless, Tophan still smiled with a resolute and accepting heart, embracing his fate. "My time is near, mother, please do not grieve. Pray for me on the other side." The increasingly weakened voice of Tauf sounded like a whisper carried on the night wind, touching the heart. His eyes turned to the dark shadow drawing closer, ready to accept his fate with unwavering bravery. The black shadow reached out with its hand, as if inviting Taufan to follow it. However, this time, the presence of the shadow no longer invoked fear. Instead, its presence brought warmth and reassurance. The shadow's hand moved as if to signal, "Do not be afraid. I will always watch over you." Taufan's mother cried with tears of happiness as she saw her son peacefully pass away. Though she felt a deep loss, she was grateful that Taufan was no longer suffering. Now his soul could rest in eternal peace. Since then, the shadow that had once been terrifying had transformed into a comforting reminder to Taufan's mother that death was not the end of everything. It was merely the beginning of a new, boundless story in the afterlife, where departed souls would live forever. Several years passed. Taufan's mother had grown old and was faced with limitations. Every day, she was reminded of her last moments with Taufan. Despite the ever-growing longing, the happy smile etched in her memory from their time together continued to warm her with each weakening breath. One night, as the presence of death began to surround her room, she felt that her time was near. The air turned cold, and darkness enveloped the room. Suddenly, the long unseen black shadow appeared, lurking in the darkest corner of the room. "Are you here again?" his mother whispered, her voice filled with longing, yet her smile never faded. The shadow nodded slowly, seemingly confirming its presence. This time, its form seemed clearer, as if Taufan himself was smiling from within the shadow, radiating warmth and relief to his mother. "Can you take me to my child?" his mother requested with a voice growing faint, as if only the night wind could hear her. The shadow extended its hand gently, inviting his mother to embrace the approaching end. With the last remnants of her fading smile, she reached out, surrendering herself to a destiny she couldn't avoid. Suddenly, a blinding light filled the room. When the light subsided, his mother and the black shadow had vanished, as if they merged with the radiant light. Now only silhouettes remained, depicting Taufan and his mother holding hands, entering a world of warmth and peace. From that moment on, the house became quiet, as if it had lost a part of itself. However, within the silence, a new life seemed to be growing. It was as if Tophan and his mother had found eternal happiness. The once terrifying black shadow had become a touching reminder that death was only the beginning of an endless story in the afterlife. In this story, unwavering and unconditional love will always accompany us, whether in the world of the living or the afterlife that awaits with longing. The end.